Memphis voice actor. And before we get started, we'll establish a few rules as far as questions go. Let's limit it to one question per person. Try to keep it short. I'm sure he'll give you his frequently asked questions up first. And we'll start forming a line for anybody who wants questions. We have it in the front. We get one of our security guys to get a mic out there. And he'll go ahead and start. And then if you have a question, just line up right there in the center. Thank you very much. And autograph sessions will be afterwards at the rooms down here at the end. So no autographs or pictures after the panel is over. I appreciate it.
Yes, what he said. Yeah, I need somebody to do all the legal and technical jargon. I only handle small words, typically. All right, so we can go ahead and start bringing you guys up. Do we have a microphone? We have a microphone. Security, you gotta get a microphone. Yep. So come on up here, make a line in the center, I guess, and fire away with your questions. Yes, don't be shy, because I'm coming down there and find you. I'm teaching you. Yeah, you swore by. Is that the best Optimus Prime?
No, that's not the best.
He sides with your No, that's an amazing impression. All right, so all right, we got our first victim.
If Odell is here, Odell Atkins, if you're here, come on up. Odell is also a voice actor / voice director. Worked on some indie games. Worked with a buddy of yours, Kyle there. Adrian Spencer Collins, who was the voice of the original Starscream, Chris Latta. Thank you very much. It's self-explanatory.
All right.
So, frequently asked questions first. How you got into it, favorite character, that type of thing. And then
I saw you guys. I'm very sorry. I'm used to structure. Okay. All right. Ask me. Frequently.
Well, let me ask you something. How did you first get into voiceover?
A bad proctology appointment. No, I was working as a driver and a mailroom clerk for a low-budget sci-fi film company, and I had the deepest voice in the mailroom. And they were casting this Japanimation thing. This was a long time ago, and nobody knew what to call it in the States. And so I had the deepest voice in the mailroom, and they knew I had a music background, so they asked me to come on a weekend and audition for the role of a monster ripping the arm off another monster. And I figured, well, I can do that. They're going to feed me free breakfast and free lunch. And I was a starving actor, well, not an actor, I was a starving musician at the time. And I didn't know what acting was. And so I went on a weekend, and I think the first thing I did was and I sounded just trippy enough to book the spot. So they kept me there that day. They ended up giving me a speaking role. I did 26 episodes on the show. It's called MacGyver. And I didn't even realize that I was an actor until many years later, after I had done Cowboy Bebop, and I was at a convention, and the director of the show pointed out that I was actually an actor now.
Was that the point when you became famous and somebody's like, oh, you're that guy?
Yeah, it's so weird. It's just so weird. I really had no intention of doing it. I stayed with that same company, and I became an executive of the company and just did it on the side for fun. So,
and I know you did this a long time, so let's run away to your favorite character.
I don't have favorites because
like your children.
Yeah, they're like my children. If I chose one, there would be a huge fighting scene inside the head. Pieces of brain and skull be flying out all over the place.
No, that's the most frequently asked questions I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's not too big easy.
Remember to keep them short, one question per person. If you have a second question, just get back to the microphone. Go ahead.
Yes. When I was looking at your different voice roles, I saw that you did run from Mass Effect 2.
Yes.
And that pretty much answers my question. I was curious if you had like a voice change to do that, or you did that naturally. I would never guess you were actually him at all.
I had a sex change to do that, actually. No, that was one of the few roles they actually did pitch down. That and Ridlock Brimstone from Guild Wars 2. They pitched those two down by like a half semitone or something. I'm not sure how much, but yeah, I recorded the whole thing really deep like this and just into the basement.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, good question.
If they had an electronic device
to sound like this all the time.
everybody would be doing it, we would be out of work.
Yeah.
I was wondering, how was doing the dubbing of, how was it doing the dubbing of Great Teacher Oni's Video? Was some of that improv?
Yes, that was a really weird show. I was an ADR writer. I wrote the adaptations for dubbing from the original Japanese, and I did that for Trigun and for Digimon and a few other shows. And so I had experience doing that, and it was a good thing on that show because it was basically a Japanese translation, and it wasn't really charted out to meet all the lip flaps of the English version. And so not only was I ad-libbing, but I was rewriting the lines just to get it for saying on the fly. So I had no idea if any of it even made sense. And I still haven't seen the show, and everybody tells me it came out okay. But man, I was like peeing myself through the sessions.
Do you remember any lines from the show?
Not really.
Talk about the guy who won a Guinness Book of World Record for most video game voices.
That's one of those shows. It was one of those things where I was literally writing the lines and recording them as fast as they were giving them to me, and so I don't really remember it since I haven't seen the show. I remember confronting the principal of the school for being a perv, and offering some good advice in the context of being such a disgusting, lady, lusting child. Yeah, perv. Yeah, so I was editing my language because I know this is other reasons. Yeah.
Thank you.
But thank you.
I've always actually wondered, because you're one of those select few guys that has broken out of anime and into mainstream animation, and I know that's not easy to do. How did that ever come about?
Yeah, that really wasn't easy to do at all. And I think a lot of that largely had to do with the success of Cowboy Bebop. I mean, that's
a good one.
Yeah, well, that spawned things like Tom Tsunami for me and Megas XLR and several shows that I was brought into, at least auditioned because of that role, and it helped me cross over into other things. And thankfully, a lot of other actors have been able to do that now, and that sort of broke the barrier for them. And so I'm really grateful to see a lot of members of the anime community break into original American animation.
You did the,
learn about it.
You also did the Toonami promos. That's pretty good.
Toonami promo stuff.
Yeah, see, that was bittersweet for me, as much as I love you.
Toonami used to be your company.
Yeah.
I was like, yay!
Oh, no, it's not the stuff that's non-Tom. That's non-Tom.
Yeah.
I only in the interim, between the time that Toonami shut down in, what was it, 2008, and when we came back last year, I did do some promo stuff from time to time, but it wasn't as frequent as Peter did that.
I swear I hear you on the hub with promos.
No, I think that's Josh Keaton.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, good, Josh.
Yeah, no, I heard. Yeah,
Another drop.
I'm a huge fan of your video game voiceover acting.
Thanks.
It being the Dawn of War 2 series.
Oh, nice.
You playing as basically the entire cast of Cyrus and Boss. How much fun was it being to play as soldiers of the Imperium and Chaos and stuff in those games?
It was great. I mean, it's like everything else that was completely out of context for me, so I really had no idea how games can play out, or whether characters appeared, or if they were really talking to each other. So my greatest fear in that was if I had two characters talking to each other, that I was using the same voice for. And that is wow, it's nice to have a soundtrack. That's the most gentle soundtrack I've ever had in my life. Anyway, the fear for me is that many times I've directed just to do that single voice of the military, the really tough guy kind of thing. And I like to break out, and I like to do lots of different voices, but sometimes if I'm directed that way with two separate characters in the game, my greatest fear is they argue in the scene together, and fans will say, well, you're the guy with the blood voice, dude. And so hopefully, I don't know how it played out for you in the game. Was there enough separation?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Oh, good.
And then they don't make you record
Mission.
talking to each other as characters. They do all the characters on that one.
On that one, I did do characters isolated, but on other things, I have done.
And that's what you're having to switch back and forth really good.
G.I. Joe Resident, they played like there's that piece there. I was doing, I think, 5 or 6 characters on that thing, and they had a really low budget to get this thing out. And so I did do characters talking to each other, and so talking to Duke to, I don't know, somebody else. I got my voice, and it was crazy. But all of them were talking to each other all the time, and it was just annoying in my head.
Yeah, my question is, I know you voiced Killer Croc in the Arkham games.
TikTok. Yeah.
You know the way Warner Brothers is always doing these animated movies?
Yes.
You must have a Batman voice you want to break out in something.
Batman's always been a favorite of mine. I love Batman, and that's a voice that I always thought that I'd be right for. It's right in my wheelhouse, right in my vocal wheelhouse, and kind of in my delivery, I think is very similar to the way Batman has been played before. But I mean, how can you get better than Kevin Conroy? Troy Baker is playing him. Is it Troy? No, he was playing. Yeah, Troy Baker played him in something, and there have been so many guys who do it so well, and I've had such a great career playing so many other characters that I can't complain. That said, I did get to play Batman in Lego Batman. He was non-verbal, but I got to play Batman. I have a little action figure, so that was, I'm really happy with that. That's good. As long as I get the action figure, I'm good. But basically all I did, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the series you were in, Mary Carey.
Yes.
I watched it about a year ago when we got recommended to me from a friend, and I was kind of disappointed it was so short and how it was open-ended. What happened with it?
That was a labor of love by Jody Schaefer. He's one of the guys from Vegas XLR also. And Jody is working at a company called Titmouse, and they do all kinds of really fantastic stuff. It was really kind of his pet project, I think. And he wasn't sure if it was going to go anywhere because the networks obviously can't broadcast that unless it's on really late at night. It's really long. And I hope that at some point he'll be able to continue it on. That was a really fun show to work on. Yeah, it's really good. The animation was great. He's a genius, and he's one of my dear friends. So I really hope that we get to do that or something else together in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This job is hard to find.
Yeah, that's true.
One of my favorite characters was Cosmo Sober from Spy. I was wondering, even though they didn't show it at the end, who really won the fight at the end?
Oh, Cosmo, of course. So, the other guy's a wimp. Come on. You just get to say, "Show bullet!" That alone wins right there, right? I don't care how cool he is, man. He's my number one.
Okay, first off, I'm a Konami faithful since back to 1997.
Awesome, thank
One was the action when it also masters the voice Tom in the April Fool's Day Konami special, and did you think from that Konami will be revived?
What was my reaction to it?
Yeah.
I squealed like a little 8-year-old fan. I thought that was a joke on me first. When they called, I had kept in touch with the guys over at William Street throughout the years, and I continued to do a few little things for them from time to time. But when they told me this was actually happening, I couldn't believe it, even if it was for just the one night. And at that point, we didn't know. They didn't know. I didn't know if it was going to continue, but we just wanted to make it as much of the flavor of the old show as possible for that one night. And all of those companies were so nice to give them all of that material free, so you guys could see all those old shows again. Unfortunately, that stuff isn't free anymore, so after that first night, they would have to do licensing things, and some of them were tied up with other companies, so they couldn't continue. But we've tried to fill up, I don't do anything, I'm a voice guy. They've tried to fill up the programming with some really great shows, and you guys have responded in such a huge way that we're back to some gigantic numbers now, and the network is responding, and getting sponsorship, and Sarah is back. It's phenomenal, but I have to thank you guys really for joining in on the Twitter storms after April Fools to really get this thing back and get the network to understand how many people really wanted this back and how many people loved it and grew up with it. So thank you guys. Give yourselves a hand for. Now it's just a matter of whether or not people keep watching. So people do have to stay up and watch the show just to keep it on the air.
Thank you.
So far, so good. Thank you. Only time.
It's a big tradition to watch the room. Hi.
I just wanted to say I'm a huge fan of your work, like everything you've done, and watching that video beforehand, just seeing the range of voices that you have, and you bring each character you do to life, and in his own special way. I just wanted to ask, how do you prepare for a role or for a character to bring him to life the way you do?
Drive there and try to show up on time. Honestly, that's all the preparation you get for most of this stuff. I kind of dive into the characters. I think most actors will tell you this, that you have to invest yourself in the character as fully as you possibly can. And even if it's a character who's just, has no name, he's a side character, shows up for a half a line, you have to put just as much into that character as you do anything else. So I just dive head first in, look at the picture, if they give me one, I look at the line in front of me, and I just put myself in there and I'm gone. I'm no longer in the room, I am that character in that moment. And so I think unless you do that, you're not going to get a really good performance. And then we don't we don't have the luxury of preparation for many things, especially video games. We'll walk into a studio and they'll hand me a script that's 1,000 pages long, and they say go, and that's it. And anime is like that too. Things like the regular show, X-Men, Transformers, we'll get the script the night before or maybe a couple nights before, and at least I can look at it and have some context. And because we're working with such a big cast and we really have to keep it moving, so they want us to be familiar with it. But there's no such thing as preparation, really. You have to do that for the years preceding the bookings. That's the challenge, really. So you have to do your homework and really study and really work at it for many, many years, so you have all that stuff in your pocket and be able to pull it out at a second's notice, because it will change in the booth too once you get there.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And like most voice actors, you probably have existing characters already established in your head to build foundations on. So you have a little bit of pre-preparation going in before you actually start. Okay, now this is going to be what I'm going to base this on, and this is going to be this good.
Yeah, kinda. I mean, I'm not really a method type actor though, and I'm not a trained actor, so I don't chart things out that way. I know what my vocal range is. I know what's going to come out of my mouth before it happens, which took years to do. But basically, I kind of go by what I'm seeing in the moment. I really live in the moment. I'm very intuitive.
And I gotta say, before I take the next question, I've worked with Activision and with 2K Games, and they have never had an ill thing to say about Steve. Every time I mentioned his name, they're like, Steve was so cool. He just came in at all. Kevin Michael Richardson apparently came in late, screwed around for 45 minutes, still got his job done. They said Steve came in, he was all business, he had this big stack of lines. They gave us like 300, 400 lines to do it in an hour or so. And and he comes in with robots and leaves them for the next voice actor. I'm just saying.
I give away his Christmas presents. But in Kevin's defense, Kevin is one of those guys. He is so funny that people invite him back sometimes just so they get a good laugh, and they know that when he's going to walk into the room, you are going to split every article of clothing you have laughing. He's just drop dead funny, and he's a brilliant actor. Once all the hilarity calms down for a moment, he'll step up to the mic and just bang, bang, boom, everything is crystal clear and perfect. He's one of those guys who's a genius.
It's got to be hard to work next between John DiMaggio and Kevin Michael Richardson. Must be the most difficult job.
Yeah.
Just to get it to work.
Yeah, well, the Transformers sessions were really great.
I can bet.
Oh man, so funny.
And then there's Pat Mulgrew.
Come on, guys, let's get this work done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. I've actually grown up listening to your voice a lot. It's kind of awkward to say, I guess.
And look how nicely you came out despite that.
But, I never actually realized it was you until I actually got into the Call of Duty series with Captain Foley and Tank.
Yeah.
And then I kind of continued to go on. And after hearing your story, I actually never knew your story. But after hearing it, I understand that a lot of people have their ups, downs, and sometimes they have really bad lows.
Yes.
I understand that probably you had a really bad time. How did you pick yourself up from that and continue on?
Well, the roughest time I think in my career was really at the very beginning when I started doing this full time. Because before that it was just fun. It was just something I did for fun on weekends. And I think it was probably about 12, 13 years ago. I was going through a divorce. And at the same time, I booked a really big job. I booked the voice of 7-Eleven. I was the guy who said, oh, thank heaven, that guy. And so it was the first job that I thought that was going to have some continuing income, and it was going to be really well paying. And most of the stuff that I did before that really didn't pay very well. It barely paid my bills. And so I quit my job at that film company where I had become an executive. I had this beautiful office in Hollywood. I was making a lot of money. I was traveling all over the world. But I hated it. I just didn't like a lot of people I was working with and whatever. So anyway, I booked the 7-Eleven thing. I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to do something I love. I'm going to make that choice. And so I did it. I worked for about 2 weeks, and then the union went on strike for 8 months. And I was out of work. I didn't have a home because I had basically given it to my ex-wife, and I was living in my brother's old bedroom at 40 years old at my parents' house. And completely broke, massively in debt, and just wondering if I had made the right life choice. And at that point, I had this epiphany that, you know what, it really doesn't matter if I ever make a living at this. I'm going to continue doing it because that's what made me happy. That was the one thing at that time in my life that I could count on. Every time I walked in that studio, I had a really good time. I felt good about myself. I didn't have to try to cheat somebody out of something to do something better like they did in the film industry. And that alone was good enough for me. And so it was kind of a spiritual epiphany that got me through that time. And I started meditating, I started praying, and not with any one particular religion, I just made that connection. And that carried me through, and it continues to, because even at this point in my career, I've been doing this for 20 years, and there's still be times where I won't work for a month. You know, I'll still be auditioning like crazy, or sometimes not. But it is, you know, I get fired after every job. And it just comes with the territory. You have to love it that much that it really doesn't matter if you're famous or wealthy or any of that stuff. All this is, it's fantastic, it's wonderful, but for me, it's really the feedback I get from you guys and how it touches your lives that fuels me to keep going.
Well, thank you for answering my question.
This is not the first story I've heard of something really, really bad happening that really pushed them into career. I lost my job. Yeah, so I didn't have any other choice. Voiceover was it or nothing.
Yeah, but you keep doing it, you know, and you do whatever you have to do. I did some other side jobs in the meantime. I did everybody to support myself, and you just do what you do. I've had probably 50 different jobs while I was doing voiceover. So.
As a guy who's kind of likes to think he's an aspiring voice actor, any advice you have for any of the other aspiring voice actors in this audience?
Well, number one, I mean, that could be hours and hours. There's the one, first and foremost, I would say do it because you love it and for no other reason. And then everything else follows that. Secondly, don't take it personally if somebody criticizes your work. It's only an opinion. And again, do it because you love it. And third, I would say the best piece of advice would really be to go to my website because this is the number one. Yeah, no, this is free. It's free. It's the number one question that comes up. And so I put a page on my website. It's steveblumvoices.com. And if you forget that, just type in Steve Blum in Google, it'll come up. On the front page, it says, how do I become a voice actor? Click on that button. And D. Bradley Baker wrote this fantastic blog, and he continues to update it all the time. And it's free. There's a link to that. There's a little sort of precursor page that I wrote there. It goes to Dee's thing, and there's also a book that I recommend by Yuri Lowenthal and Tara Platt called Voiceover Voice Actor that kind of guides you through step by step so people won't take advantage of you in the industry. And then, you know, start out in the city that you're in. You live here in Memphis?
Yes, I do.
Start out here, do everything you can acting-wise in Memphis. And then when you have exhausted all of that and you've got a really great tool belt of stuff, only then consider moving to another bigger territory. But there's so much available everywhere. I mean, John is here. He's building an amazing career from here, so it is possible.
I've done hundreds of movie trailers. In fact, D. Bradley Baker inadvertently helped me get some work. When I first started off, I had this list of things I wanted to do. Being a toy and working on something Star Wars related was one of them. And I got the job of doing Captain Rex's voice for like 3 toys. I did Anakin's voice for a toy. I did the entire Clone Wars toy campaign.
Wow.
And Captain Rex. And I was like, that's neat. I'm pretty
Yeah.
good at that.
Well, so he's the guy who should probably
Yeah, I
talk
know.
to.
If anybody else is interested in voice acting that lives here, I know all the studios that are around town.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We have right at 20 minutes, so let's do a lightning round. Let's do the question really quickly. Still got a long line, so keep in mind you're waiting.
I recognize you. It's okay, she does.
Okay, before I ask the question, it's okay if the question has spoilers, right?
Your question has spoilers.
Everybody has earmuffs.
Yeah.
Okay. The ending of Cowboy Bebop, there's a lot of people who interpret the ending, you know. Some people think Spike legit died, some people think he somehow survived. And even the creator of the show said, you know, whatever, it's up to you.
Yes.
So, do you think Spike died or did he live?
I think his undead is living here as an Elvis impersonator.
That is the answer. My answer has always been I don't think Spike died. I mean, look at all the things through it, shot and stabbed, and he's been through so many different things and survived that. It's just a few bullet holes. I mean, my son very recently did an interview where he said that he
Run to the arm. It's still alive. Run to Harry Bennett.
Are you special?
That's good, my friends.
Hi, John. Nice to meet you. Hey.
Very well, let's keep forgetting about it.
I still got it's gonna be viral. Hey, somebody tell my name. Here you go. John, I still gotta talk to you. I forgot. But Steve, I was with Neo Tsunami, and I wanna, on behalf of them, I wanna extend my hand of appreciation for promoting us when we were still, on the air before Tsunami came back. And but with a Q&A, I would like to have something that people remember, and that's new information. I've never seen this information on IMDb or Wikipedia. So, what is your favorite scene?
What's Tom's favorite sandwich or mine? Because Tom's would be a Sarah sandwich. I think I'll apply it's for flavor. Favorite sandwich?
That's a Fox and Roche's kind of question.
I don't know, man. Tuna. Subway tuna sandwich.
I'm sorry, they're looking for a ham.
Yeah. That's the one answer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Actually, we did like 20,000 other people, so I don't know. It's a weird question. Hi.
Hi, I noticed you did the voice of Zed in League of Legends.
Of who?
Zed?
Zed and you, probably.
League of Legends? Voice?
Do you know?
Yeah, he's like, God Steve Blade is the deadliest.
Oh, no, dude. You do the voice, then I'll parrot you.
God Steve Blade is the deadliest.
And was it in my voice or the Young C. Blade is the deadliest.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
You sound just like him.
Just like him.
Good job, Mr. Director.
Hi.
I want to say I grew up with Tsunami and I love your work and I totally respect you.
And I respect you. Thank you.
Could you do a Zabuza voice for me?
I was going to create a vortex, but he created one first!
Thank you. You're awesome.
We have only time, we're going to cut it short here, I've been told about security, so we only have time for 2 really quick questions, or one that's semi-immediate. Make it really fast.
You've done a lot of video game voices, some of which have been your natural voice, the Spike Spiegel, Vincent Valentine voice we all know. Others have been distorted, like you mentioned Gridlock from Billboard Studio Games. You also did voices in the Stalker game series, Clear Sky.
Wow, yeah.
I'm a big love those games. The question though is going to be, games like Stalker, until I looked at Wikipedia, I never knew this, and Gridlock, I would recognize it without knowing that you did it.
Good.
So what I wonder is, do you feel better when you do a voice that nobody would recognize it's you, but you pull off the role, or would you rather be the Spike Spiegel, Vincent Valentine voice where everyone knows, hey, it's Steve Blum?
I'm very.
That was a quick question.
That's weird. No, that's actually good. There's a lot of information there. I've actually never been in for the celebrity, so I love it when people don't recognize it. That means that I've done my job really well, in my opinion.
Regardless of which voice it is.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah, I'm up for one people. That's one of my favorite things to do. So, thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right, guys, we have under a minute left, so
All
that's
right.
the fastest question ever. Everybody else is.
It's an honor to be on
Tomorrow.
I just wanted to ask if there was a character you really wanted to play or somebody got the job and you didn't, you were upset about that.
There's a lot of characters that I would like to play, but I never get upset because I've been so lucky to be able to play the characters I have. So I don't look at life that way, honestly. I'm so grateful and so surprised every time they put me.
Is there anyone in particular that you would like to name?
Well, originally it would be Batman, but then I got to do Metal Batman. It was enough. It was like, awesome. Thank you.
Everybody else, it's all right.
Thank you guys. We will have another metal tomorrow.
Tomorrow, right after this. Thank you for coming, Steve, everybody.
Thank